everyone, welcome to another episode of Intellectual Horsepower. I'm editor Greg Jones.
And I'm Brendan Baker, the technical editor.
And we got a bunch more great topics to talk about today in the racing motorsports world. But first we're going to talk a little bit about the rise of alternative power vehicles. I'm sure if you're anything like us, you've been hearing a lot of predictions and conversations swirling on these topics of EVs.
I mean, it's all you see in the news anymore is like everything EV, this, that, but the OEMs are spending big money on EV, so they've gone all in. I don't know if that means you can't go, that we're too far in. We have to go down that road, but because there was at one point, diesel was a part of the solution, but now that's kind of being phased out, especially for light duty and passenger car stuff. But and then there's hydrogen that people were talking about. So interesting enough, like Toyota, you hadn't heard a lot about that, and they were one of the original EV adopters, or I should say hybrid adopters with the Prius.
Sure.
So but everyone thought, okay, they're going to have some great EV, but they really haven't, because they've been investing kind of quietly in hydrogen power. So who knows? I mean, that's a long play. And I still think electric is kind of a long play, but we're getting a lot closer.
Well, you mentioned a long play, and that's kind of what everyone's doing, is predicting all these dates, 20 and 30 years out. And, SEMA just released some market research that suggests that sales of alternative power vehicles are currently 5% of all U.S. light vehicle sales today, but by 2035, it's expected to reach 45%. And like you said, the OEMs, 18 of the top 20 global automakers, representing 90% of new car registrations worldwide, and they're widening their portfolios to get more and more of these models.
Yeah.
I mean, so do you believe these numbers? Do you sit here today and say?
Do I believe that we're going to have 45% in 2035? That's a tough one, but I have to think, I'm starting to believe that is going to happen now, whether we need it, whether it's a solution or not, because everybody's geared up for it. So because they've invested so much in it, they're going to want to get that return out of it. And, I still think that, obviously, I've heard a lot of different theories as far as like EVs are great for, great congested areas, big cities with, lots of population, especially up and down the coasts on both sides.
Sure.
But in the middle of America, I mean, an EV, you might be going, I'm worried about, just like it seems like a lot of other people, the infrastructure. I think on the coasts and stuff, you're going to have, where there's a lot more dense population, you're going to have the infrastructure enough, and they're going to be building more, but it's the middle part that I think is going to,
Right.
So hybrid, I think, is possible still, or much more.
Well, to your point, the SEMA research says that 3/4 of America still prefers gas or diesel, and they've got concerns about charging infrastructure, price, and driving range, which
there's just
you
a
just
lot of
mentioned,
unknowns, But as you can see, I mean, so the other long haul is, and maybe we'll get into this a little more later, is just then there's that big giant elephant in the room, the autonomous vehicle. Which I think, I'm really opposed to that, but, however
let's make the segue since you brought it up.
Okay.
Obviously there's still a lot going on with these alternative powered vehicles, and mainly EVs, and currently the EV market's only 1%, but, the OEMs are going to have a lot to say about where that goes.
Some interesting cars. I mean, okay, the Tesla Plaid is the Plaid S or whatever. That's a pretty cool car.
Sure.
And there's other ones that are be like that. There's Porsche just released, kind of their version of.
But you're talking about cars that cost what?
Yeah. I mean, they're still going to be out. The price is going to be outrageous, I think. I think that's the biggest problem right now.
Right.
Till EV can scale up enough, and you can get enough of that battery, the battery power to the masses, it's going to be pricey.
Yeah. So let's switch to what Brendan was mentioned earlier with autonomous vehicles. I recently read a report that suggested or hypothesized that, could driving be outlawed by 2050? And that email gave me pause. I was like, really? To take away manual driving?
Well, think about 2050. So we're going to go from 2035 to 45% EVs, and then 15 years later outlawing it.
Yeah, so
that's as big a leap as I can think of. You can even.
I had a lot of issues with this report because, sure, it didn't talk about the nature of autonomous vehicles today versus then.
Right.
Because they've got to go a long way in terms of their capabilities and their poor weather driving, number one.
Yeah.
Number two, to say that you're going to outlaw manual driving, you got to have enough autonomous vehicles for everyone to drive.
Or
which in the United States right now,
share type thing.
Yeah, but in the United States right now, you have nearly 300 million vehicles on the road. And
have you seen Hot Tub Time Machine 2?
I have.
So, when they call up those little smart cars, hey, car, and you don't want to hurt the car's feelings and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. I think kind of that might happen to some degree where you're going to just have cars that are owned by a conglomerate that you're just kind of renting a space in, just like you would a spot on a train or whatever. You just say, hey, car, pick me up. I got to go here.
I have no doubt that at some point in the future, it'll be a reality that we don't drive or that we don't even own cars. They just kind of exist on the roadways.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's going to be 2050.
No, because there's too many legislative issues that they would have to get over.
Yeah, I mean, again, you got to point at the fact how few autonomous vehicles are actually on the road now.
Yeah.
Let alone even being full autonomous. Like, you still need to be there holding the wheel or be ready to take over.
Tesla's already, they've already had a bunch of lawsuits with their autopilot feature, which I think has been disabled on some of their vehicles or most of the new ones. So,
to me, the biggest thing too is to state that it could be outlawed, be made a law.
Yeah.
So, like, you're going to take away a right for someone to drive.
If we can't even wear masks, I don't see how they're going to take
away
driving.
I think that's a huge hurdle. But number two is, what's the reason? Are you going to, you mentioned movies, in iRobot with Will Smith.
Yeah.
They talk about, the cars are driving themselves, but they're going like 150 miles an hour. So it's like unsafe for a normal human to take over. And in that instance, I can see, like, okay, you don't want the soccer mom driving her minivan at 150 to keep up with traffic.
Right.
But I don't think that's the reality. I think you're still going to have 70 mile an hour, 65, 60 mile an hour speed limits.
I mean, the bulk of this stuff I see
and who says that we can't keep up with autonomous cars?
And autonomous, I guess. But, within the legislative rules and stuff, it'll be hard at this point. But we're in the, kind of the horse and buggy stage of this.
Right. It's kind of a far out prediction, and it's certainly one that gets you talking and thinking about.
You're like, hey man, what could happen? And then you look at how kids are driving now. A lot of kids aren't driving, so who knows in future? Those kids have kids, and they, are they going to want to drive? I don't know. I mean, that's a sad state of things, but I think, again, it could be a sport. Engines and all that is more of a hobby.
That's a great point, because this report does say that, this is more for your public roads and your everyday driving. I think, you're obviously still going to have motorsports and racing and those areas that people will still get to drive, from a recreation standpoint or from a professional standpoint.
Yeah, I think that's I think possible to happen, and I mean, a lot of it is even with motorcycles now. They're not a need, you go out and ride them on public roads, but that's something you bring out on a nice day. You go, you might take it to a track day. Same with, some of your cars that you have. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think we all agree that it's going to be a reality at some point in the future that we get there. By 2050, I don't see it happening. I certainly don't see it being a law that you can't drive at that point.
That would be a tough one. Who would want to be the legislator trying to pass that one? You'll never run for anything again.
Moving on to our third topic today, the EPA and the RPM Act are still kind of button heads, going back and forth, and it's been a big story recently that PFI Speed out in Colorado has been kind of the most recent shop to face an EPA fine. And,
that stuff has been going on now for a little while, and it's not just this administration or that. It's been going on even in the last administration. So, the EPA, again with this one, with the PFI Speed, they're a retail distributor, right? They're a retail, they sell to the public. I don't know why they're getting in trouble for it, just because they do sell to the public. I guess they're the last one, holding it. But to me, it's kind of that this stuff has to
I think
come to an end.
It must just be easier to slap the fine on the business than tracking down, in this case,
Honda,
37 Honda S300s that were sold,
right?
And finding out exactly what got put into. But
I mean, if you're going to look at it like that, you can use the stuff on the street. But I think, again, for those of you out there selling stuff that could be used on the street, you got to make sure you say this is for off-road purposes only, for racing uses, track only, and try to clear that up. Because, man, you don't want that knock on the door, the G-Man. And I don't see that really going away. As a matter of fact, I think that emissions rules are just going to get tighter and tighter, and the going back to the EV thing, you're going to get squeezed out of the everyday. It's going to become so strict as far as what kind of pollution numbers you can do that. There's always ways to override this stuff, and people will find their way to do it.
Well, and one of the ways that the industry's fighting back is with the RPM Act and showing support for that. And we've mentioned SEMA, we've mentioned PRI in the past. Both those organizations have been, really pushing for that and helping support it. So,
well, the car industry is a humongous. I mean, this is part of the issue with going to other things and moving away from fossil fuels into new alternative energy, is just because automotive industry and cars is the cottage industry of, well, it's not a cottage industry anymore, the aftermarket, but the performance aftermarket in particular, I mean, has been around forever and has spawned a lot of jobs, and a lot of creativity. It's kind of part of the American fabric, in my opinion.
Absolutely. Yeah, so again, PFI Speed's kind of the latest one that's making headlines, that they got an $18,000 fine that could be up to $180,000 if they don't pay.
Any idea what they've done? If they've?
I think right now they're just kind of, trying to get some help.
Get a lawyer.
And, we were talking with Clay Milliken in our last episode, and he mentioned a buddy of his that has a shop, and
I've heard other stories too.
He got slapped with a fine, so it is happening, and it's unfortunate.
I mean, the Diesel brothers got slapped with some big fines too. So
So like we said, support the RPM Act. Follow the link on the screen that we'll have up there, and make sure you voice your support for that.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, speaking of strict racing, in the NASCAR world, there's been some headlines, and specifically with 23XI Racing, those guys have mentioned recently that they're going to have a second car join the team for 2022, and Kurt Busch is going to be the driver. How do you like that move?
I think it's a great move for both. I mean, Kurt Busch, the weird thing is his brother Kyle Busch has raced for Gibbs and been in a Toyota forever. And as far as I know, they've never been teammates on not in NASCAR, maybe outside of NASCAR.
No, I think it's Kurt Busch's first time with Toyota. So
his first time with Toyota. It's going to be a Gibbs prepared car, basically. It's like a Gibbs junior team, but and I do think that Busch he's an experienced enough guy that he can help guide that team to the direction they need to go. Bubba Wallace, nothing against him. I just think that he needs a little bit more help getting the cars where they need to go. And you always need a teammate,
It's only going to help this team, grow and get better. And as you said, Kurt Busch
he gets the number 45, which is Kyle Petty's son, Adam Petty, when he died. That was his number. So Kyle Petty gave the blessing to them to run.
Coincidentally, it worked in their, Michael Jordan's favor that
Yeah.
he's got 23 and now 45.
Wasn't he 45?
Yeah, both numbers that he played with in his basketball career.
Yeah.
And I guess he had 45 in his minor league baseball career, too.
Yeah,
so.
That's right. That's right.
So that'll be joining the team. And, you mentioned Kurt Busch's experience, and he's got 33 race wins.
He's been a champion.
At NASCAR's top level. He's been a Cup Series champion. And he spent the last 3 seasons with Chip Ganassi Racing, which is now, now got bought by Trackhouse. Yep.
Yeah, I think it's, I think it's a good move. He's got, Busch has got the sponsors. He's got Monster Energy, so he could kind of go. But this one makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
I think
and Monster Energy is staying on board with him for, for the move. So
good.
Now, kind of in conjunction with that announcement, next year NASCAR also announced that they're going to be moving the number on the car to a slightly
Only
different
NASCAR
position.
would make this kind of announcement.
It kind of got some social media play, and
it's like, ooh, you're moving the number.
Became a headline.
Yeah.
So they've done this in the past. It was in the middle. They've gone to the back in the past, but this time they're going to be moving to the forward part of the car.
I mean, this goes back to their original stock car days. The stock car days, when they were real production-based stock cars, you always ran the number on the door. As big as it, you just filled that door with a big number. And they didn't have the sponsors like you do now. So you just saw, oh, here's number 53, here's number 43. Now I think the fans and everybody, the numbers are almost irrelevant because you can recognize the car by their color scheme and the sponsor and
the driver,
all that stuff. And the driver, they have, with all their, the automated scoring system, you don't need, there's not really anybody up in the booth going, okay, 43 went by a lap. Okay, mark that down.
Yeah, it's definitely changed.
So, yeah.
But, NASCAR says that with the next-gen car coming out next year, which is where this change is going to make place, it's got a smaller quarter panel there. And the move of the number just gives sponsors a little bit more room to be on the car.
Yeah, I think you have to do that. The cars look cool. They're going to, I think they're more similar to like a Trans Am car is now. So I'm interested to see how they
It's just one of those things that it looks funky when you first see it, but, I mean, you're not even going to notice once they get out there and
after
start using
Daytona,
it.
you'd be like, yeah, that's a stock car.
Yep. Well, another big move in NASCAR, and this one's in the Xfinity Series ranks. Recently, Emmitt Smith announced that he's going to be partnering with Jesse Iwuji.
I didn't even know who he was really until I guess he's run a few races, and and he was friends with Emmitt Smith, so that's a good buddy to have.
I guess Emmitt Smith ran a car for a race, or sponsored a car with a race with him last year, and they got to know each other. And Jesse has some experience in Xfinity in previous years, and with the truck series.
Yep.
So he definitely has
it'll
some
be
race
good. I think the more
experience.
guys like that you come over, you got Pitbull as an owner, you got one of the New Orleans Saints guys is like a running back is like a brand ambassador kind of.
Alvin Kamara. Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. He's going to be the growth and engagement advisor for NASCAR.
We don't know what that's going to be, but if it brings in other people that normally wouldn't be attracted to NASCAR and new team owners and new interest, I think all the better. I'd like to see him go into other racing too. Let's get some of that into NHRA and some sports cars and all that stuff. So, but
absolutely, I think it's been great to see what NASCAR has had happen in the last couple of years, and the folks that are getting involved in NASCAR recently are definitely making it a better sport and making it a more encompassing sport for their fan base and new people to get involved. So I only view it as a good thing, and I hope that this is just another team that can.
Yeah, I mean, I wish them all the luck. I mean, racing's hard, and it takes a big wheelbarrow full of money to do it.
Sure.
So,
And one of the things that these guys said they want to do with their team is be more inclusive and show that there is opportunities for the lower income communities and folks out there who might be watching.
It's again like what we talked about with the women's issues. You have to have people in these positions so that other people know that it's even possible. Like if you don't think you could be an astronaut because you've never seen somebody like you before be an astronaut, you're never even going to be dreaming. You may not dream of it the same way.
So this is going to be a 2022 team that they're going to be in the Xfinity Series next year. No formal announcement regarding the manufacturer, car number, or team alliance, sponsors. Even the crew chief has been released yet, so that's all still up in the air.
Are they running with Penske, or they're going to be like a Penske Junior team kind of?
Again, I'm not sure on all those details. They did hint that they're going to try to get potentially the number 22.
Oh, okay.
For Emmitt Smith, playing off the Jordan type stuff.
Yeah, because that's the Penske team's running.
And right now, Team Penske is running that in the Xfinity Series. So.
I don't know if Roger Penske's going to let that go that easy. Maybe.
Who knows? Maybe Emmitt Smith will sign a footballer.
That's true. There you go.
But he's probably already got one of those. Who knows?
Yeah.
Again, sticking with NASCAR, some big news on some of the female drivers involved in the sport, and particularly Hailie Deegan. She recently became the first female driver in NASCAR to get a top 10 finish outside of Daytona. Do you view that as a pretty big deal?
Yeah, I think it's a big deal. I mean, she can drive, and it is a big deal because, you need to have not just women drivers. It's good to have women drivers that are performing well and that are up there in the top echelon. You got to have top 10s. You got to have some top 5s. Wins will come with the right team. And she can drive. I mean, I've seen her in a lot of different categories, and like her dad was an off-road racer, legendary off-road racer, and she kind of grew up around it. So I think that she, and she's definitely got a very marketable kind of personality and everything. So
yeah, she already knows how to play the game in that regard. And
so if she can get into a good seat and now, continue on the progress.
I want to correct myself. I think I said all of NASCAR, but specifically the Truck Series.
Oh, okay.
She's the first woman outside of Daytona to do that, and she finished 7th at the Worldwide Technology Raceway a couple of weeks ago.
Okay. Yeah, I've seen her running in races. Like she ran an ARCA race and was really competitive there, and running in the top 5, top 4, and so yeah, she's on her way. I think that just getting the following and just getting with the right people and teams, but all that takes luck and talent and all that stuff. So, but I think she could do well.
Again, congrats to Hailie Deegan for that achievement. She joins 3 other drivers who did it at Daytona, finishing in the top 10 or better.
In the Truck Series, or
in
just
in the Truck Series?
Oh, okay, gotcha. Yeah.
Jennifer Jo Cobb, Natalie Decker, and Angela Ruck all did it at Daytona. Cobb did it. She was the first one to do it in the season opener at Daytona in 2011. Angela Ruck did it in 2019 with an 8th place finish, and Natalie Decker was the most recent last season, 2020, doing a top 10 finish at Daytona.
Okay, yeah.
So
yeah, the Truck, they do have some women drive, and again, like going back to some NHRA stuff, you have Leah Pruitt and the Force sisters, and the Pro Stock. Her name's already.
Erica Enders.
Erica Enders, yes, correct. Yeah.
Gotten a bunch of championships.
She's won a bunch of stuff. So it's like, that's going to happen, I think, on the NASCAR side. In other racing, I mean.
Well, we cover Monster Jam on occasion in our magazine, and they always talk about it's an even playing field. You're getting the same equipment.
The fans.
You're getting
right.
the same opportunity to compete against the guys. There's really no physical limitation when you're talking about driving a race car.
Yeah, it's not football.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Which is funny because like football is half their fan base is female. They've got as many female fans in football. I don't know what it is exactly with NASCAR, but there's a substantial female fan base in NASCAR. So, it's just going to be a matter. I mean, Danica, if she could have won some races and done, that, I think that would have been a whole different story.
Right,
but,
right.
Well,
again, it's great to see these women, doing well, and I'm sure it's going to continue. Absolutely.
Yep.
Well, changing topics to a little sadder news. We've had some notable deaths recently in the motorsports industry. Namely, we've had motorsports broadcaster Bob Jenkins, racing journalist Robin Miller, King Engine Bearings founder Samuel Zaslavsky, and Howell EFI founder Bill Howell all pass away in the last month and a half.
Yeah.
So we wanted to just spend a couple minutes talking a little bit about them and,
Well, and I know, like, the first one that I remember it was Bob Jenkins when he died fairly early on, But Bob Jenkins,
he was 73.
yeah. I mean, I knew he was sick, but he was really, when you tuned in to when I was a kid and watched ESPN and whatever racing was on, I watched it, NASCAR, you name it.
Mm-hmm.
And Bob Jenkins was always on there. He was always on ESPN for one of the Speed Week broadcasters, which was like a weekly wrap-up show and stuff. He was just the voice of racing and a lot of Indy 500 stuff too.
Yeah, he had a 5-decade career, at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway radio network, and kind of the Indy 500, voice. So
he was, he replaced the longtime announcer, which his name eludes me right now, but they, again, just a guy with that kind of voice. He was, really forever tied with Indy. Especially the Al Unser Jr. Race where he's with Scott Goodyear, and it's like, I mean, they play it all the time on, Valvoline commercials and stuff.
Yep.
Yeah, so good stuff. I mean,
yeah, and his voice was also used in some motorsports video games and movies and things like that too. So Bob will certainly be missed, but his love for racing and the industry, certainly helped a lot of people get into this industry, and he'll leave that legacy behind. So, Robin Miller, as we mentioned, is one of the other ones who sadly passed away in August. He was also young, on the younger side, 71.
Yeah, these guys have had, definitely some health issues that have, contributed to it, and Robin Miller, I mean, sad news, just how it kind of happened, seemed to progress pretty quickly, but he was one to me, like, as an IndyCar guy, IndyCar fan, and have worked in IndyCar. He was the guy that always knew stuff that nobody did. He had the back channel with all these people, so you listened to what he said, and everything he said usually made a lot of sense, and it typically happens. So.
Well, and again, like Bob Jenkins, Robin Miller has, a long history with IndyCar and Indianapolis and ESPN and Speed.
He's a throwback. Like I think I commented online at the time when it happened. Like, he's the guy that was the link between old time racing, like, the past of racing, to where we are now, the present. He was always really good at connecting with the old driver, AJ Foyt and guys before him, and knowing the history of Indy and of just dirt track racing and open wheel racing in America, and just knowing those guys, having, raced elbow to elbow with a lot of the greats, when he was in midget, raced a midget for a while. He was able to connect those kind of drivers, and like the Pancho Carters, and like he could pull out the most obscure name, and you're like, how does he remember that stuff? But that's just how he was wired, just like guys with their baseball players,
Well, obviously he's had a pretty storied career, and knew a lot of folks in the industry, and because of it, in 2019, as Miller covered his 50th Indy 500, Indianapolis Motor Speedway announced the creation of the Robin Miller Award. That is now cool. a annual award that's given to individuals who bring unbridled passion and unrelenting work ethic to enrich the sport. So, not only does he have a big legacy left behind, he also has this award that's going to carry his name, and that's awesome.
Well, that's cool. I mean, and he didn't have he wasn't married and didn't have really any family. So I think, racing was his family. Mm-hmm. So I think having this kind of continue on in his name is definitely a good thing.
Yeah. The third out of four deaths here, not Now, this guy was not young, but Samuel Zaslavsky, the King Engine Bearings founder, he passed away on August 20th. He was 95. And
yeah, I mean, he lived a full life and definitely saw some, from the beginnings of King Engine Bearings and just, the automotive world, 95, he's seen, from the early
days of the industry. So
yeah,
he started King Engine Bearings 61 years ago, and pretty much worked there at the company up until the last few months, as we have been told. So again, leaves behind a company that's doing great things in the industry and creating products that I'm sure many of you guys put in your engines and race cars. So that's great. And again, sorry to hear that he passed. But the fourth guy on our list here is Bill Howell, founder of Howell Engine Developments, also known as Howell EFI today, or better known as Howell EFI.
Yeah.
Now, Bill passed away back towards the end of July after a battle with ALS. But again, another guy who's had a long history in this
he revolutionized kind of the whole, the Chevy, the GM, EFI setups, and just being able to go in and change things. I mean, I raced against a few of the GM teams, in street stocks and in showroom stock where, they would be on laptops able to make adjustments, and we had to have basically the whole computer, the ECU would have to be reflashed. So, and we couldn't do that at the track. They had a pretty good advantage from using his stuff. And I mean, it's still, I was just looking at their site the other day, as a matter of fact. I mean, they've still got some great products out there.
Yeah, so again, Bill spent 26 years at Chevy before founding Howell EFI in 1988 with his son Matt, and Matt still, he's the co-owner and president today, and the company's in their 34th year and still doing a bunch of great things. So, again, sorry to hear that he passed, but he's left behind a company and a legacy that's still, moving on, carrying on.
These industry guys, although Ed Iskandarian, man, he's 100.
Yeah, he just celebrated 100.
We should have had that in here, because that guy, man, he's seen it all for real. I mean,
and I remember
the cam father.
Right. We posted about that. We shared it in the magazine. I mean, that's huge news to hit 100 years. I'm curious if you got a JM Smuckers shout out on the Today Show or something.
Oh, right, they do that. Oh, man.
But I mean, you talked about a guy who's done it all in the industry. That's certainly Ed. And
I think he's had the same jacket for 100 years too. I've seen him at show. You're like, that is an old jacket, but it's cool. It's Ed Iskandarian,
Yeah, and that happened a little earlier in the summer, so just. Yep. Now, something else coming up here in the fall as we approach trade show season. Obviously, there's been tons of talk about whether those will even happen, and it really sounded pretty optimistic for a long time that they were, and obviously they're still happening today. But we see some COVID numbers on the rise again, and so recently SEMA and Apex have announced some health and safety measures that they've put in place.
That's basically just them saying, "Don't worry, we're having it. It's going to be," and I think it's going to happen. We're too late to unless something really, really drastic happens. But these shows are happening. I know another show that's going to happen in end of October, I believe, is happening out in Vegas. And
I think the biggest thing is that Nevada and Las Vegas itself has put in place some more strict safety measures than maybe elsewhere in the States.
Right. So you're going to have to wear masks indoors.
So big events like the trade shows, you got to wear masks inside. That's going to be one of the rules. Now, Apex came out with a thing about requiring proof of vaccination or having a negative test before you arrive at the event. They've also talked about.
You still have to wear a mask, even though you have proof of.
I think you still got to wear a mask. They've also talked about having some testing sites, there on premises for folks that maybe didn't get the vaccine or just have time to get a negative test. So that stuff's getting put in place, and they made that announcement recently. SEMA, on the other hand, is a little more up in the air still. They're kind of still feeling out
and the other thing with SEMA, there's a lot of outdoor stuff there.
That's true.
So, even though you may have to put on a mask indoors, you'll also have a lot of stuff outdoors to look at, which I think that'll be fine. And as long as you've got either a negative test or a vaccine card or whatever, you should be good. And yeah, the wearing the mask part, I'm not a huge fan of it, but I'm not, I don't hate it I'd rather be healthy and keep other people healthy. And,
I mean, the fact is, if you want to be at this show, you want to exhibit, or you want to attend, I mean, you kind of have to play by the rules.
You got to go by their rules.
Or you don't show up. So that's just kind of the situation that we're in. But, again,
I'm just curious whether that makes a difference for people. Is that going to be like, oh, I'm not going because you got to wear a mask? I don't, my feeling is I don't think we're at that point.
I mean, I certainly think there's those folks out there.
There might be.
But I don't think that's the majority. And certainly when you're talking about a show that has already had a 1-year hiatus because of this, I think a lot of people want it to be back, and will support it being back. So
I don't think SEMA can, a lot of these things, this is their one event that they rely on, that, it's their big winner. And they did a good job with the virtual stuff, but, you can't do that all the time.
Yeah.
I know they'll still have virtual going on this year, but it won't be the same. There's going to be a lot more in person and, events and things just like normal,
Yeah. Well, that first week in November is fast approaching, so we'll quickly find out how these shows go off, and we hope that they go off well. But speaking of things getting affected by COVID a little bit, you were talking about Le Mans, which is typically in June. It happened in August this year.
Yeah, it got bumped back.
Tell us a little bit about that race.
Well, I mean, part of it too, you're like, oh, it's going to get bumped back to summer, and it's going to be better weather because June's kind of sketchy in that part of France. And then, so what do they have for the start of the race but a bunch of rain, And I thought that was going to lead to a bunch of carnage, but a little bit of carnage. I think I mean, it's funny how in a 24-hour race they can be that close together at the end.
Yeah.
And it's only getting, so with this new class, it's called, if people don't know, they've gotten rid of the LMP1 category, which was an outrageously expensive. There was only one team running it left, that was Toyota. Mm-hmm. And they were spending like $200 and some million a year on it. $200 million a year to go sports car racing. I mean, that's more than some Formula One teams, and Formula One's trying to cut that back. So the new rules with hypercar are a lot more open to various, shapes and designs and style. It's going to lead to a lot more variety in the series. Like Glickenhaus is an American team from Texas. And they ran, this was their first race at Le Mans, 24-hour. And
you said they really didn't have much.
They really didn't have a lot of time
to
get the cars ready or anything. But they turned up they did qualifying and were actually competitive in qualifying for a single lap and everything. And they ran really well. They were, they're not a hybrid package, so it could be smaller and lighter. There's some advantages that they do with the balance of power and all that.
Yeah.
Which some people like, some people hate. But I think the hypercar thing is here to stay, even though Toyota won again in a hypercar this time. So the car is totally different. But there's going to be some really funky designs coming out next year, and I'm excited, including with the IMSA series with the LMDH. So they're getting rid of the current Le Mans, their current series cars, like the DPIs, the prototypes. They're going to have there'll be hybrid power, but it's a stock. Like everyone's going to run the same hybrid unit.
Yeah. Just
different motors, different designs. The other difference is, so in Le Mans package, the full hypercar package can run 4-wheel drive. You can run an engine like your electric power on the front wheels and your ICE power on the rear wheels. So you essentially have 4-wheel drive. In Le Mans package, it's all rear wheel.
Okay.
You don't have anything powered. So it'll be a little different in how those things work and come together. I think Toyota, they didn't miss a beat, but let's see when they get a little more competition.
Right.
So,
well, it's always cool seeing all the new developments happening in the racing world, and Le Mans is no different. It's cool to see what's happening.
It's always evolving,
So that does it for us on Intellectual Horsepower for this episode. We want to thank you guys all for watching. Please comment, like, subscribe on the YouTube channel. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter if you haven't already. And until next time, we'll see you then.
See you then.